Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Monica Sanford Show. I talk to whoever I want to talk to and about whatever I want to talk about. And today we're remote. As you can see, I'm not in my usual studio. We're remote because our guest is not local. He is actually calling in from Tennessee. Hey. So he is not local because he is also an international best-selling author, #1 bestseller on Wallstreet Journal, #1 bestseller for USA Today, a top book to read, a must read from Forbes top 20 list. And so if you can get your hands on it, definitely get your hands on it. He's sold out in Tokyo, India, Japan, Brazil. So he's all over the place. But the book is this book right here, the Bezos Letters, 14 Principles to Grow Your Business Like Amazon. So I am, he's also a national business consultant, influential thought leader, expert in business growth and strategies and plannings, risk management. So he goes around telling businesses, small and large organizations, how to be successful and reach their leadership goals. So he also has had decades. How many decades? How long have you been in insurance industry?
Do we have to count?
I know.
40 years.
Well, 40.
Maybe
Well, because I say that because my dad has done insurance for about 50 years. So he's,
okay, there you go.
And he is going to be listening, I know. So he is ready to hear it. So please welcome to the show. Thank you for coming, Mr. Steve Anderson, award-winning author. He literally, when he answered my email to be on the show, was like, oh my God, cool. Yes, we need to make it happen. So I am looking forward to kind of getting your insight and helping us unpack and doing a deep dive into the mind and secrets and just the unlocking the codes of Jeff Bezos. So my husband actually is going to be, and everybody that listens to me knows my co-host is my husband. So I will be introducing him in just a few minutes to the people that don't know him, but he's going to be actually doing more of a deep dive into kind of leadership, organization, things like that. And you have spent many hours, many thousands of hours, I'm sure, dissecting, analyzing stakeholders, the stakeholder letters, and coming up with common themes, common principles behind the leadership and culture of Amazon. So I'm very excited to get into that. So my job right now, I'm going to do a quick little statement and then ask you just a couple of questions, and then before I kick it over to him. So
Okay.
Thank you first. Welcome to the show.
Monica, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Perfect. So mine is, kind of a little monologue here. People that know me, I've been in healthcare for almost 30 years. I have worked at large hospitals, large healthcare organizations from Johns Hopkins, University of Maryland, North Carolina, down in Miami, big, huge military installation hospitals, anything. And I was a traveler as a nurse. Now I'm a doctor of nursing practice. So I've been in it quite a while. I've seen all kinds of stages of leadership in the organizations. So as a traveler, I've been to small and large organizations. So I love how you say in the book, also invest in high standards is a must. And Amazon is in the business of making complexity simple. Because I see when I go around to all these hospitals, organizations, kind of a common theme, a common thread that I see that works, that I have noticed, that make them successful leaders, successful CEOs. And the top three to me are communication is key. And that is open communication, what we're doing, why we're doing it, things like that. Accountability of the leaders and CEOs. And of course, to me, always in pursuit of excellence. You can tell the organizations that have expectations of high standards, and they're always in that pursuit of excellence. Now, I wanted to start because Amazon pivoted during the pandemic, of course, into healthcare, and now they're going all in. They're all in healthcare. You touch on this on your book, talking about, the innovation, the technologies, and them going all in. So you also talk about, of course, Jeff Bezos having kind of this futuristic longevity type intentional transition, intentional movements in everything he does. So you're going to tell us about that. But here is leading up to my question, I promise. So healthcare, Amazon is leading, going into increasing access to healthcare, which we always love, increasing the delivery of healthcare, And I think their excellence is going to be, when they're transforming that delivery and access, it's going to be in their execution, how they execute it. And I think it's going to be flawless probably. But to me, that is the biggest thing when I see organizations that they may have great people, but if they can't execute certain things, then they're just kind of spinning their wheels, which is going to be my second question. My first question to you is, excellence, let me just say, to me, excellence can be transparency, always offering, continuing education things, always, building up their people, encouragement, engagements, making sure they're at the top of their certifications, things like that, and make them very elite, the whole team very elite. So what are you seeing? What do you see when you're going around to different organizations, different companies, small and large, the common attribute, the common traits, the common denominator of all the high performers, the successful leaders and CEOs, and where do you think Amazon is going with the healthcare? I know,
Just a small little
question.
topic there.
Small topic. Sorry, I know that's a lot to unpack, but
that's okay. And I'm trying to think how to do it without rambling on. Here's a couple thoughts that come to mind. One is I identified 14 principles that I think Amazon used to grow. And kind of your question about what do I see in other companies, and that's really where this book started, is coming out of the insurance industry, being a part of that for, as we said, many, many years, I started asking the question, is the biggest risk insurance agents make, that's my primary market, or is the biggest risk they're making actually not taking enough risk? And that led me to start looking at different companies, some that were very successful at one time and are literally no longer here. Came across Amazon as an example of a successful company that's still here and still being successful. So what's the difference? And, I'm going to start talking about a couple of the principles. And I think to answer your question, one of the things that I see that Amazon has that I don't see well developed in other organizations is this idea of experimentation. So again, I'll get into healthcare because that's a really good example. But at Amazon, experimentation is key. And so my first principle, and I broke those principles into 4 different cycles: test, build, accelerate, and scale. The first principle is encourage successful failure. So Bezos writes a lot about experimentation and failure. And what he says is, you need to experiment to figure out what you need to invent next. And to do that, you need to experiment. And it's by its very nature, an experiment means you're going to fail. So you have to embrace this mindset of failure's not bad. It's actually just a next step.
Right. And I love it. And in healthcare, not to cut you off, but it is that quality improvement. People are always looking to improve process, improve system. So things like that. But sorry, go ahead.
And I would say even in healthcare, there's a reluctance to quote experiment. And,
Right.
and it's a little counterintuitive because drugs, you experiment all the time to find out the right one.
Right.
And pharmaceuticals, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I would say Amazon is experimenting with healthcare. What is it that we can do in healthcare? And his phrase, that is meaningfully differentiated, meaning what can we do where the customer experience, the patient experience is meaningfully different than what they experience today. And
Right.
they've done that a lot, over the years. You think about the Kindle and Marketplace and Prime. And I mean, there are a lot of things there that they experiment with. And this idea,
and that's why I'm saying the execution to me is, they have this already ingrained in them. They want excellence for customer service, things like that. The access, the delivery, like you said, in pharmaceutical, in even providers, getting providers to them overnight, or telehealth, their
Yep.
technology, innovation, things like that, and their equipment, even medical equipment. So, this is not something to sneeze at or hard to, I mean, you can't ignore it if you're in healthcare business, because they
Well,
are going
I would
to
say you
execute it
shouldn't
very well.
ignore it
You
if you're in
shouldn't ignore
healthcare
it.
business.
Very, very good way to
I
put it,
think
but
maybe too many are. So you mentioned another principle called make complexity simple. So let me give you the story behind that. That'll relate directly to the healthcare piece.
okay.
I was in my car, still remember perfectly. I was in my car listening to National Public Radio, NPR, and their Amazon had just recently, the last day or two, announced their acquisition of PillPack. PillPack was a startup
Right.
looking at delivering multiple medications packaged by the day. So it's easier for patients to know what pills I need to take when, what day, and what time during the day. So
Right.
there's just a big role delivered to their house. Amazon acquired them. And one of the CEOs, I don't remember which, of CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, was being interviewed. And he said, I'm not worried about Amazon coming into the pharmacy business because it's much more complicated than they know. And I literally said out loud, but that's what Amazon does.
That's their
Is they
job
make
to know.
something complicated simple.
Very simple. So
And so that's where the principle came out of. And
that's a great story. I
even if,
love that.
yeah, as you look back over the history, they've experimented and closed certain things. So their
Just how they can
healthcare,
streamline things, how they can make it
well,
simpler
and
and accessible and
they're willing to figure out what works and what doesn't work,
right,
and then take what they learn and iterate or change. So
right,
it was JP Morgan Chase, it was Berkshire Hathaway and Amazon had a partnership to recreate the healthcare delivery system. Didn't work, right? Too many compete, whatever the reason, it
right.
almost doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So they closed it down, but that didn't mean they stopped, right? Now they're the telemedicine that they
Yeah.
did during the pandemic, the actual labs they created to test for COVID-19 and the kits they sold created during the pandemic. Again, another step in the experiment. And
Right.
I want to
And
go back to,
legislative is behind that too, because legislation things are increasing broadband. And when you increase broadband, you increase access. That is definitely a social determinant of health. But when you increase that access to telehealth, increase access to ordering things online to get to your house where you cannot come in and purchase things at smaller businesses. So that is a huge, huge thing that they are going, deep dive into. So my next question though, and then you can come back, sorry, is it because I'm going to lead into, I'm going to kick it off to my husband here in 1 second. Because where do you telling the, smaller, here's a problem. I have left organizations that don't do this stuff well. Of course,
Mhm.
I have left organizations that I have lost confidence in their ability to lead, in their organizational, their mission, they have lost sight of things. So I have left organizations like that, but what would you, and they, because sometimes these small and large organizations kind of get in this kind of mediocrity, they get stuck in it. They just kind of, everything is mediocre and that's fine for them and things like that. But would you tell a small business, large business organization to continually try to raising that bar, to elevate themselves, thinking long term? How do you get it to across to them to not get stuck in that mentality, to not get stuck that this we're doing fine, but how to protect that and then continue to elevate?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest problems almost any business faces, regardless of size, is as they get successful, they have a product service platform that customers are resonating with, et cetera. They start thinking about how to protect that success, not what do we need to do next.
Right.
And so that mindset starts limiting what they're able to do. And again, how they're able to invent more things on behalf of the customer. So I think that's one aspect of it. Some of
And
that
take
is
risks. They don't want to take risk
they don't want to take a
sometimes.
risk.
Yeah.
And another aspect of that is as a business grows, they tend to get more bureaucratic. And at
Definitely.
Amazon, they fight against that,
Yeah.
meaning,
Oh, good.
so again, one of the principles is high velocity decision making. So at Amazon, and again, Bezos talking about this, which is what's fascinating to me about the letters themselves, is most shareholder letters are boring, and it's only touting the business. Bezos
So these are not
did,
boring stakeholder letters.
well, he did tout the business, but he also said, here's how we do it. And that's what really started intriguing me. And so Bezos says that as a business gets more bureaucratic, all that levels of approval does is slow down growth. And when you
Right.
slow down growth, you slow down the dynamic idea behind the business. And
Yes.
so, yeah, that's again, lots of stuff there, but
Well, that
it's
actually leads into my husband where he's going to kind of pick it up. So y'all can continue to talk about that. But yeah, sometimes the kind of middle management, to me, management makes themselves feel important. Leadership makes you feel important type thing.
Mhm.
I know people have heard that many times, but they don't want to upset the apple cart in corporate, in the
right.
corporate world above them. So but here I'm going to introduce my husband. He is my co-host for the show and of course in life for the past 35 years. So he is a retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel, David Sanford. He has been prior enlisted and retired as a Lieutenant Colonel. So he's been on both sides of leadership. So he's, has that experience of both sides. And he's going to be actually picking your brain too on your entire experience, not just Amazon, but entire experience of leadership. And he has a master's degree in leadership. And after retirement, he went to work at corporate America in two major organizations. And he is also writing a book, actually, comparing and kind of contrasting military leadership. He was headhunted right out of the Marine Corps to go into corporate America and leadership. And sometimes you have to be careful what you ask for when you bring in a Marine Lieutenant Colonel.
Yeah.
But he is writing the book on kind of military but comparing civilian leadership, things like that. So right now, the magic of our producer here, my husband's going to be sitting right here and continuing on. So.
Sounds great, Monica.
Hi, Steve, and welcome to the show. How are you today?
David, great to have you here and be able to talk with you a little bit.
Well, I appreciate it. I won't be quite as hard hitting as Monica, but I'm gonna do my best to pick your brain.
I don't know. As a Marine, I'm not sure that's possible for you, but we'll see.
Well, I assure you, the only thing tougher than being a Marine is being a Marine's wife, and she outdated us. Not 35, it's 32, but
There you go.
there you go.
Cool.
Okay, so first thing I want to do, I want to kind of get into leadership development. So our audience knows, as Monica said, I retired out of the Marine Corps. Out of the Marine Corps, I went straight to corporate America. Been out there for 10 years, and needless to say, I was shocked at the difference in leadership culture in the Marine Corps and going to corporate America, which I think most veterans would say the same thing. So real quick, leadership in the Marine Corps as an officer, 3 months of officer candidate school, 6 months of the basic school before you ever lead your first Marine. Okay. I started my career at Target. That leadership development doesn't exist. At least it didn't back then. Okay. And I don't consider logging on to a PowerPoint brief as any kind of development. Okay. There were some leadership classes along the way. I logged into one leadership class. It was supposed to go every Wednesday for a month. And on the very first class, Chelsea Clinton was on there is one of the speakers. I'm sure she's a very nice lady, not really sure what she could add to leadership. So for me, it was, they're not taking this really seriously. And due to the poor performance, there were no more classes. Okay. Mike Etor, he is a retired Marine Corps colonel. In March 2020 issue of Forbes magazine, he cited a stat from the corporate executive boards where 50 to 70% of executives fell within the first 18 months. I think I've read every leadership book out there in the civilian side. I really like Simon Sinek, his book, Leaders Eat Last, which is a play on words from the Marine Corps, which is officers eat last, which really means that the highest ranking person takes care of everybody else before they take care of their own needs. Robert Greene, on the other hand, I'm sure you've read his book, 48 Laws of Power, basically talks about how to manipulate your way to the top with great titles such as Never Outshine the Boss and Take Credit for Everybody Else's Success. Okay, I saw a lot of Robert Greene out there and not so much of Mr. Sinek.
Yeah.
Okay, real quick on Target, sort of their operational process, which comes down from the C-suite, which is whether you're a $250 million store in Times Square or a $30 million store in small town America, the operational process is exactly the same. So Steve, if you and I start a consulting business on how to run a family, and we took someone with one child and said, you're going to run this exact same way once your wife has quintuplets, I'm not sure that we would be in business for very long.
No, I have to agree with you on that one.
Right. So to me, it's impossible to create good leaders if you aren't teaching people how to lead, and poor leadership contributes to our poor culture. So this is my question to you. Based on the failure rate of executives, why do you think corporate America invests so little in leadership development?
I think most businesses that I've seen, again, large or small, tend to be very autocratic, certainly at the beginning, right? So there's a founder. Founder has an idea. Founder has risk-taking the guts to put something together, to get enough customers to at least look like they're successful. And as the business grows, the skills necessary are very different. So going, from $1 million revenue business to a $5 million revenue business, the founder no longer can actually do everything. And a lot of founders are really good at ideas, but not necessarily good at running a business or running a large business. So who's training, helping, working with them? And I guess I'm going to be, transparent is the right word here. So the book is one part of what I do. The other part is consulting around technology for insurance agents. And I give you the short version, but I started a new business, sold my intellectual property, my consulting process, et cetera, to this new business, which I am co-founder and CEO of. What I discovered along the way is that I'm really good at ideas and coming up with new things. I am not good at the day-to-day details. And so I learned pretty quickly that I needed to bring in other people around me to support me, to replace some of what I do now, or did, to let me be good at what I'm good at. And I feel like that's not the playbook a lot of people use, meaning it's my idea, my business, I make the decisions. I think back to my father-in-law. That's where I got into the insurance business. He had an independent agency and never grew because it was him, and he is the only one who made the decisions. I mean, to the point of when the mail came in, it was taken to his desk and he sat and opened the mail so he could look at everything coming in. I mean, that kind of control, which doesn't lead itself to ideas, I would say invention, and helping the business grow internally. And I wonder how many times that kind of thought process happens, even in a large business, a Target or whatever example that you want to give. that one, it's top down, right? Here's our process, you have to follow it. And two, there's no room for flexibility. Kind of, I think you were alluding to a 30 million store in Manhattan for Target is a really different kind of store than in rural America or a smaller town store. Different needs, probably different things they should stock in the store. And that leads me to think about Barnes and Noble bookstores. Purchased recently, last couple years, by a company out of United Kingdom, Watertown Books, I believe is the right name. And one of the things they did is they gave more autonomy to the store manager so that they could do what is right in their community in terms of what books they stock, how they display those books. It's different in different parts of the country and different types of things. So rambling a little bit there, but I feel like
I think we're in agreement that if your wife has quintuplets, you may run the house a little bit different than if you just
when
have
the wife has
a single
second
child.
you run the house differently.
Well, I guess
Much
that's
less
the beauty of being a
quintuplets.
Marine. I was deployed a lot, so my wife did most of the
Yeah.
kid raising. So
Yeah.
all right. Well, hey, I appreciate that, and yeah, a lot of I think Monica mentioned it, but you're obviously most famous, I suppose, to the general public out here for writing the book, which I did read and it's excellent, but you have a lot more experience out in corporate America and you consult with a lot of companies. So that's kind of why I'm trying to reach out and get into a little bit deeper than to just a book. So I really appreciate it. So my next question, and we're kind of stick here with the target theme, and it's about promoting the most qualified candidates. And again, this is something that was a shock to me going from the Marine Corps to corporate America. And I'll just go back to Brian Cornell's successor at Target. Pretty clear that was a disaster, lost billions of dollars in Canada because couldn't stock the shelves, and what was stocked there wasn't what the Canadians what they were looking for. So I think one of the issues there, I can tell you in the Marine Corps, Marines have no issue calling out their boss. In fact, it's expected. I'll give you a quick story. When I was the commanding officer of the Marine Company at the National Security Agency, took the company for a run, come back. The rule was you jump on the pull-up bar and you knock out as many pull-ups as you can do. So I jumped up there, got 20, got down. Everybody else finished, and this Lance Corporal who had been in the Marine Corps since breakfast come over and he said, "Hey, sir, you sure you got all you could do? Is that all you can do?" Obviously it wasn't. So I got down, knocked out push-ups until my chest was busting. And then I got up on the pull-up bar, knocked out as many as I could till I fell off the bar. So the penance was paid.
Yeah.
We're coming up with an operational scheme to do anything, whether it's a march from here to there or going into combat. All the best ideas come in, and hey, if Lance Corporal Jones got a better idea along the way, we're going to incorporate that because it's deadly serious what we do. I didn't find that in corporate America. I found just the opposite, where questioning those above you in corporate America it's considered insubordination. So I'll give you a quick story before I ask you my question here. So a boss 2 levels up above me, he looked me dead in the eye, just as serious as he could one time. And when I told him an idea, and he says, "So you think you're smarter than so-and-so sitting in C-level in the C-suite in Minneapolis?" And I'd heard many things, but that was kind of astounding. So my answer was, well, yeah, I do think I'm smarter than him about what's going on right here because I'm in here. Okay. But he was completely serious about what he said.
Mhm.
And again, my answer was yes. So what I've found in corporate America is that yes man mentality is essential to promotion. I would say likability is more important than performance. And I doubt that anyone told Brian Cornell's successor that the king wasn't wearing any clothes. And the Target board was pretty smart when they decided to go outside the company to find their next CEO. And Brian Cornell has done really well things. So my question to you is, what do you recommend to companies to ensure they're promoting the most qualified candidates?
Well, I think a couple things come to mind. Um, One is, and again, I'm going back to the book and a couple principles that I pulled out there. Um, is, maintain your quality in your hiring. So especially, I would say even maybe more so now when it appears to be really hard to find people. I think there's a natural tendency to get a body to fill a job, not the right person who has the right mindset first and maybe skills second in order to do the job. If you do find that person, then give them the authority, leeway, encouragement to actually do what you hired them to do. And I think I will say at Amazon, one of the ways they tried to do that, and again, Amazon's not perfect, so I just want to acknowledge that, but I do feel like they've been working on trying to improve all kinds of different things. But one of the ways at Amazon they do that is they have small teams. So they might have 100 small teams, and each team is responsible for a certain piece of a project. And those small teams have not complete, but a broad autonomy in order to make decisions and move forward. And one of the benefits of that small team is communication among the team members becomes easier. And that I think back to, and I have not been in the military, so I don't have any direct experience, but from what I understand, the military is set up with small teams that
Correct.
keep getting bigger, right? What's the smallest? Platoon?
The smallest would be a fire team.
A fire team. Okay. And then there's a next step that's bigger. There's a next step that's bigger. But those fire teams then, certainly in a battle, they are making decisions on the fly.
Correct.
And you, as a leader or commander, rely on the training that they've received and their innate ability that's been identified to put them in those positions in order to make the decisions they need to make, not having to keep going up and down. Bureaucracy is how I would describe it. And I think that, and you've got to have leaders who are comfortable. The phrase I'm thinking of is comfortable in their own skin. They're, and I
Don't
know
you
for
think this
me,
goes back to my original question?
it
When you're
does.
when you're not taught how to lead, okay, you get that thin skin because you're not really sure what you're doing. I mean, I'm not
Right.
talking about the actual doing things, but the actual leading people. And
Yeah.
so then it's
Yeah.
thin skin, and these guys make it all the way up to the top.
Well, and it reminds me of the Peter Principle book, right? People getting promoted to their highest level of incompetence.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't serve the organization certainly well. It doesn't serve the employees well within the organization.
Absolutely. Okay, last question for you, and this is just a little easier. We'll get off a target. So and Monica kind of touched on this. So a lot of small business owners here in Pensacola, if you were starting a business today, what would be that one nugget as far as hiring people that you would tell that small business leader?
Two things come to mind. One is partly dependent on what they're expected to do. I think one of the things that Bezos did early, 2004, that really helped continue to propel them is he banned in any meeting PowerPoint or any slide presentation. And he required from that point on that people write a memo. Now, I won't go into all the details of it, but it's fairly specific.
It's in your
Because
book. Yeah, I read that.
Yeah, and I think that's really intriguing to me because what he says is when you write something out, you have to think deeper about whatever it is you're pitching to get a decision made. You have to think about all the questions people are going to ask and I think come up with the answer. You have to know what skills you have and what skills the company doesn't have or the team doesn't have. So you have to identify where you're going to go to get those skills in order to do the project. And so, and I think that, I guess for me now becomes obvious in the way Bezos wrote the letters. Words were very important to him, and how people thought as they wrote things out were very important. So I think that's currently at Amazon in their hiring process, depending on the position, not every position, but depending on the position, they say in helping people prepare for the interviews, you may be asked to write something, because we believe that shows more what you know and maybe more clearly how you process information and how you will work in a team. So I think that's one. And for, somebody really small, that may not be as relevant, but I think still thinking about that. The second thing that comes to mind is customer obsession. Now, again, that's Bezos' words. You read the book, so you have a little bit of background there. And I've always thought that word was interesting, unique. You don't hear obsession used in customer focus. That is what you hear: customer focus, customer journey, customer service. But if I'm obsessed over the customer, then I am learning more and more and more every day about their deepest needs, their deepest desires, so that I can then take that information and invent on their behalf or take friction out of a process. I think there's too many businesses, I deal with them all the time personally, I think you might do, that they're just friction points. They're just things that make you stop as a customer trying to do business with somebody. And the more you can think about how to create a better and seamless experience with your customer, regardless of what you're doing. So let's get out of e-commerce. I met a gentleman actually locally, has a couple of auto repair shops, and now he's franchised kind of his system. And one of the interesting things he said is he literally has two shops connected, same building. One is for Japanese cars, one is for European cars. Because he said, we realized people with a Mercedes don't want to go to a Japanese repair shop. They think their Mercedes is better, different, whatever. But that's understanding. And so he separates them, two different doors, two different teams. But that's going deep into a customer's thought process and mindset and creating an experience that's optimized for them.
That is very deep into customer obsession.
Isn't it?
So
I mean,
that's
I
very
never
deep.
thought about, actually, my wife takes her car to the Nissan place, right? I've always seen the European repair next door, never understood the reason or the connection there.
Yeah,
But
and
to
it's
me,
the same owner. So that's deep in there. I would just say I would say two things. This kind of touches on some things we talked about. One is everybody needs that Lance Corporal working for them that's going to inspire them to do the right thing and be better and be a great leader. So
Agreed.
that's number one. The second is I understand customer obsession in the Marine Corps. Our obsession is on the Marines. You make your Marines better, you challenge them to be better, and then we'll work on the enemy. Okay, so that'll be next. But first, you gotta develop your team.
Yeah.
So Steve, I appreciate you coming in today. So let our audience know how we can get a hold of you, phone number, website.
Great, I'd be happy to. So the book is available on Amazon, as you might suspect, and it's actually international. So there are 19 different languages. Some of that in the background, you see some of the different book covers here.
Right.
I am active on LinkedIn, pretty active there. So you should be able to find me. And if you do, let me know you listened here, and I'd love to connect with you. And third major place is the book website, which is thebezosletters.com. And there's some additional information there about the book and some workbooks and some things like that. So if you do read the book, my goal was to help you actually implement something, not just read a nice story. So
It is an excellent read. It's very well written, easy to read, and some great points in there. So
now,
I
by the way,
encourage
David,
everyone to purchase it.
I will mention at the very end here is Karen and my wife, Karen, and I wrote this book together. So the way we phrase it is, it's my ideas and her words. So if you like the way the book read, it's her.
Everybody knows that behind every good man, there's a better woman, right? My wife will tell you that for sure.
Absolutely. And one of the questions I get is, how'd you guys write a book together? And I said, actually, really easy. I implicitly trust her opinion. If she says something's not going to work in the book, it won't work, and we need to redo it. So, and that's how we actually work together.
Beautiful. Well, Steve, it was great talking to you. I'm actually going to turn it over to Monica. She wants to ask you one more question. So thanks, sir, and you have a great day.
David, thank you.
So thank you, Steve, for talking to my husband. Yeah, it was a great conversation. I just wanted to ask you one quick question. I know you already gave kind of all your contact info and stuff, but I literally, the burning question I had was, so since you wrote the book, have you kept up with the new stakeholder letters coming out? And I know he has this kind of futuristic that we talked about thoughts. What's coming down the pike for Amazon?
Well, I have. Andy Jassy took over as CEO. So the last letter I think I mentioned was 2020 that Jeff Bezos wrote, and Andy Jassy has written 2 more letters there. And, you know, again, if you're watching the news, Amazon's going through a lot of change right now, right? In terms of layoffs. And again, a lot of that was the pandemic. And I think that's where my view is Amazon. What's the right word?
Well, was that intentional? Was that an intentional transition? He was ready to hand over?
I think it was very intentional. And I actually, the way I think about it, I have a friend here locally, and he just went through a transition from CEO and then transitioned to his daughter as CEO. And what he said was, there's no success for a CEO without a successful succession. And I feel like for Bezos, and I don't know why timing right now, I actually think he wants to spend more time on other projects. Blue Origin, his space company, is a very big deal for him, and some of those kinds of things. But
no doubt, he still has a lot going on. So
he has a lot going on, a lot of interest, and he was starting to make that transition before the pandemic, and then got pulled back in to Amazon on the day-to-day stuff. And I think he realized he was.
Well, so does it have the same undertone then? The same?
Yes.
I mean,
so Andy Jassy.
He just took the ball and is continuing to do.
Well, Andy Jassy is a 25-year employee. He actually was Jeff Bezos' shadow early on. And then Andy Jassy actually grew and ran AWS. So he is deeply into the Amazon culture. So I think that piece of it is fairly seamless. Now, he's not Jeff Bezos, he's Andy Jassy. So we see some things different.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be very cool to see. Thank you so much again. I just had to jump in and ask that question because I'm like, what about the new CEO and the new letters coming out? So definitely one more time, shout out your email address, and thank you so much for coming on. This was a pleasure.
Email is steve@thebezosletters.com or the website, thebezosletters.com. Be great.
thebezosletters.com. Check it out. It's amazing. I'm going to, and thank everybody for joining in. This has been an amazing conversation. So thank you so much for answering my email and coming on.
My pleasure.
Pleasure to meet you.
Take care.
All right.